For everyone that's on the webinar today, I think it probably maybe for you, if you're you're like most attorneys that are interested in starting businesses or thinking about it or have business ideas, it really could be one of the most important webinars that you've ever heard, just because it's directly based towards you. And even if you're not thinking about it, it's going to tell you probably why you should be an attorney as opposed to an entrepreneur. So I have the silly giraffe here right now. I'll show you it again, but it's something I keep in my office, and I keep it there because it reminds me of one of the most important lessons that I can teach you, both as an attorney and also if you decide to become a business person or entrepreneur. A giraffe is born, it falls out of its mother like 2 meters as just a baby. It's just a horrible fall, obviously. And it's dazed. And then the first thing it does is stand up. It's one of the first few mammals that can stand up the second it's born. And its mother runs over to it and she stomps on it with her foot and knocks it down and repeats the process several times. And you think this is like an awful thing. But the baby giraffe is forced again and again to get back on its feet. And the lesson is that in order for the giraffe to survive against predators, it needs to be able to get back on its feet quickly, the baby giraffe. And it's going to be chased by lions and all these different things. So it's really teaching it how to get back on its feet and get knocked down again and again. And so that's what the giraffe mother does. And it's really a very powerful lesson. There's a quote that I found that I like. I guess it's an Arabic proverb, and it says, sometimes in order to do or to get something good, you have to be a little rough. And it's like that, I think, with a lot of these webinars and a lot of the writing that I do, I try to be as direct as I possibly can with people. I don't try to sugarcoat anything because I think that's helpful to you to make you grow as a person and an attorney. And it's very important to me that happens because I'm trying to give back to the profession that certainly has helped me. So, as an attorney, obviously, or as an entrepreneur, you're going to get knocked down a lot. And people get knocked down all the time as attorneys. You can get fired in this type of economy. You may get fired or laid off. You will not get jobs when you want to. You will have people say bad things to you. You will get bad reviews. You will make mistakes. And you'll get knocked down again and again. And it's important to know that the most successful people out there all get knocked down and they get knocked down again and again. Just reading the news about any political figure or any politician or any entrepreneur, look how much they get knocked down and how often that happens. And in my life, doing the kind of work I am at, I can't tell you how many times I've been knocked down. It's from any time you try to do something that other people are doing, or anytime you say anything that may be the truth, but it hurts people or rubs people the wrong way. Anytime you, as a business person, it can be very difficult. And anytime you have to make a mistake. And so this is the job of an entrepreneur. It's also the job of an attorney is to get knocked down. And just realizing that really could be one of the more important lessons that you could ever have, because so many people give up. They get intimidated. They don't believe that they're capable of anything. And you really need to learn how to stand up when you're knocked down, because you're going to be knocked down, especially when you start doing very well at stuff. And when you get successful, and that's when the claws really come out. It could be from your own family. It could be people in your family trying to undermine, knock you down. It could be your spouse. It could be your significant other. It could be your friends. You just don't know. So you have to be aware that's what it is. And so why do I bring that point up and make that point so strongly today for attorneys? The problem with an attorney is attorneys are often the exact opposite. They're risk averse. They're in a profession where they're working for people that a lot of times that are taking risk, whether it's representing a criminal or a business person or someone in litigation that's sued for doing something stupid. Attorneys are different. And so the idea of an attorney being an entrepreneur, if you can just think about this, getting knocked down and not having money for payroll or not making mistakes or having competitors write bad things about you, it's lunacy and for a lot of attorneys. And so just think about it. If you ever get into it, entrepreneurship is something that is really going to make where you're going to get knocked down. Now, I want to make one other point before I start the webinar, and this is, again, it's another story, and it's one of my favorite stories. There are people that definitely should be practicing law and need to do it. It's a lot of them. It's most people that become attorneys, and there are people that shouldn't be practicing law. I remember when I was going to law school, I was a contractor, and I had all these friends and people, and I was very successful and happy, and I was on cloud nine. Every day was like the best thing that ever happened. And my business was growing, and I was very happy. And then I was like, I'm going to law school, and everyone was like, are you insane? And I was young. I didn't know what law school was. But I was like, I have to be an attorney. I have to do this. And but it's so much different than the kind of work I was doing. And I guess, and from what I was seeing back then, but then I got to law school, and I had a funny experience where I was the kind of person, I would sit in class and be like, why are people recording these and selling these recordings? This is crazy. That sort of thing, because it just, entrepreneurs think differently. And so do many times attorneys think differently. So there's just this whole idea of, a lot of people think they should be entrepreneurs. A lot of people think they should be attorneys that are actually really much more suited to be entrepreneurs. And so you need to think about this. And this is a decision that everyone that's watching this probably need to make at some point. You're going to have people trying to get you to start businesses. You're going to think about starting your own business. You're going to think about, and it's a big decision. And so the story I just wanted to tell you, you know what, I'm going to save it for later in the webinar, this different story, and I'll just get started. But it is very important just to remember that if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to get knocked down. Now, it's very important to understand that if you decide to leave the practice of law to do any type of business, even if it's your own law firm, or join an existing business in some capacity because you think it's a good entrepreneurial activity, you're pretty much going to be saying goodbye to your career working in a law firm. I'm just telling you that because I know it and I've seen it, and there's certainly exceptions to that rule. But if you decide to leave the practice of law in a law firm, especially a big one, your odds of getting back into another law firm are very slim. That's as an employee or an associate and that sort of thing. You certainly, if you play your cards right, could do all sorts of things to get back into a smaller law firm. But for most good-sized law firms, you're pretty much kissing your career goodbye doing that. And the legal world just doesn't welcome you back. How do I say that? How do I know that? I know that because I place attorneys all the time, every day of the week practically, and I've rarely seen someone that's left to do something entrepreneurial ever get welcomed back, regardless. They just don't care. It's just a different personality type. It would be like, I don't know, I don't know what an example would be, but it would be like a ballet teacher trying out for a ballerina trying out for a professional football team. They're not the same. They're both very talented at what they do, but they're just not the same. It's just that you're an entrepreneur or you're an attorney a lot of times. And again, I hate to say that, but it's just the way the law firms think. The legal profession is a guild, and if people leave their guild, you get punished, and you better be certain you're doing the right thing. And if you're really more of an entrepreneur than not, but you have to really know that. It's like knowing anything. If that you are, I don't know, if you it's just the kind of thing instinctively. It's not something that you can control. You can't control. I don't want to be controversial here, but if you are attracted to the opposite sex or you're attracted to the same sex, these are not things that are learned, or it's just natural. And so you have to go with what you have, and how do you discover your entrepreneurial nature but at the same time, a lot of it's very natural. So it was funny. In my first law firm job, I was next to an office with a guy that was a senior associate, and this was in the early days of eBay. And he always would buy all this pinball equipment and stuff and sell it on eBay. It was very funny and I was at Quinn Emanuel, and it was just this very tolerant, open environment, very non-corporate. There were no ceilings are all exposed, and the people were walking around in shorts. But it was just and I think he was maybe about 10 years out of law school, and all these people would be rolling in these pinball machines and things into his office. He would be signing for them. It was just very funny. And he was very miserable practicing law. He just felt like he was trapped. He had nothing else he could do. He actually, when I say at least an hour, some days his commute was 2 hours. Eventually, he had to buy a motorcycle, which he said was like going to work on in a video game, which is funny. But he was commuting from Los Angeles to Orange County. He had a house there. He couldn't sell it. He was constantly worried that his wife was having an affair, and he'd sleep in his car and in the parking garage because he didn't want to have to commute 2 hours each way to get back and forth to work. And so he'd do that at least a couple of days a week. And then he'd been working nonstop. But this is a funny story. He'd been working nonstop, and he was told he had to go to Orlando to depose a witness. And after the deposition, he decided to go to Disney World and spend a few hours there. And his cell phone had died, and he couldn't retrieve messages because this is back in the day when the cell phones were much bigger and didn't have long battery lives. And when he got back to his room at about 8 o'clock at night, there were a bunch of messages on his hotel phone, as well as a fax at the door. And so he called a partner back in Los Angeles who was very upset because he wanted to hear how the deposition went. I think it was a message that was, I think it might have been written in big letters or something on the fax. It said something like, "A lawyer always needs to be reachable. I'm taking you off the case and putting another attorney I can trust." And it was a big time attorney that I think they lateral from Gibson Dunn or something. I remember that he was working for. And then when he got back to Los Angeles, he was sat down and lectured by a few partners for being irresponsible and unavailable. And just as an aside, I just remembered that years later, I was placing an attorney in the firm's office in Silicon Valley. And I was talking to a partner and I asked how this guy was doing. And this was like 6-7 years later. And he was counsel at that point. And they said, "Yeah, but I've heard some stories about him like being unreachable." And this is literally 7 years after this happened. And he's a nice guy, but I've heard some stories about him being unreachable. And so he was lectured about that. And this is 7 years. It's just literally for going to Disneyland for a couple hours. And I'm not criticizing the firm because obviously they have very high standards for the attorneys. But at that point in his life, this guy did not enjoy practicing law. He had a house, children, and a lot of responsibilities. It kept him very busy. And so he was constantly, like a lot of attorneys, dreaming about starting his own business. And this is something that attorneys do all the time. I go out with attorneys, and especially when people are drinking, like 2 or 3 drinks in, they tell you how they want to have a vineyard, or they want to do this business, or this business, or they have this business, or this client's talking about this business. They're all just dreaming about starting their own businesses. And so this is how he started his pinball business. And he'd spend weekends driving around California to buy these machines. He'd go to auctions and all these different sorts of things. And he'd be very excited. He'd come in and he'd say, I just made $600. I've got 25 bids on these flippers, and I just come check it out. And I'd go look at his screen. And he was very happy when he was doing this. The rest of his existence was just slumped over a computer, writing briefs and things, and going to depositions and sleeping in his car. When he was doing this, he was very happy, and he would have the machine shipped to his office, and sometimes there were 4 or 5 of them. They would be stacked in these wooden boxes, and it was just very funny. But he loved this pinball stuff, and partners would come talk to him. And again, Quinn, such a cool firm back then. I don't know what the culture is like now. I'm sure it's still a really good culture, but the partners would come in and talk to him, and they would just not even say anything about 5 pinball machines stacked in his office. It was just a very, very cool place. And deliveries would be coming in that he'd sign for and stuff. Because I used to see these partners standing outside his door talking. It was just funny. And his secretary would be helping him ship things out. And so one time I asked him how much he was making, and he said he'd make at least $10,000 over the course of the year. And at that point, he was probably making $150,000. Now, I'm sure he probably made a lot more than $10,000, but that's what he said. And barely whatever he made was compensating for the time he was spending on it, but it didn't matter. He was happy and alive doing that. And he wasn't happy and alive practicing law. It was just a different existence for him. And a lot of attorneys, maybe you, probably a lot of people, dream of an escape from the accountability of practicing law, which is the working in front of a computer and the stress and the bosses and this guy he may have quit now because I couldn't find him recently, but after leaving where he was at, he went to another big firm and became a partner there, and was there for a long time. And so until recently, I don't think he ever left the practice of law. He had a family to support, and once you get in that role, you're stuck. He had a very nice wife that I liked, and children, and a house, and And he certainly couldn't have made the life that he had of selling pinball machines. The other thing that's funny too is that when I talk to a lot of temp attorneys and doing these Zooms and stuff, they always have there's always a button like on their screen. You can see on their saved things where they go and they're always checking their investment accounts. And I'm always thinking maybe they're just trying to retire. They want to make sure that they're going to, how much money they have and if they're close to retirement. And so a lot of lawyers spend their days talking to and doing work for business people. They can't help but be envious, a lot of them. They take orders from these business people. The business people yell at them. They work long hours for them. And that, honestly, that's what we do as attorneys. We work for people that have more money than us. I do that for law firms. I work for law firms that have, I'm still an attorney in that sense, that have more money. But the law firms work for people, unless you're doing a lot of consumer law, which means working for individuals that are getting DUIs and wills and things. But unless you're doing consumer law, most of the time you're working for people that have a lot more money, and you cannot help but believe that type of life many times is more rewarding. And a lot of lawyers dream of that sort of life, and they want that freedom and escape. And so a lot of attorneys believe that they can go out in the world and they can start their own business. And again, I'm not talking about a law firm, which I will talk about today, because that's a great business for a lawyer. Why wouldn't you start a business where you're selling your time for a lot of money? It's a great business. Wow. But they dream of any type of businesses outside the legal field. They do all sorts of things, all sorts of ideas and these fantasies about different types of businesses you can start. And they dream about that instead of being a lawyer, which the fantasy is that they'll be able to make a lot of money, perhaps unlimited money, and have more freedom and not be tied to the billable hour and not have to be lawyers with that associated stress anymore, which is a good dream. But is that your skill set? Is that what you're made to do? Is what we're going to talk about today. And again, there's a lot of attorneys that have made the jump from being attorneys to entrepreneurs, but they're very rare. And most of the time, the attorneys that do that are so freaking, sorry to use that kind of terminology, but entrepreneurship, that entrepreneurs, many times they don't even pass the bar, and they just start. There's a big pizza chain in California called Shakey's by attorneys by an attorney that didn't pass the bar. There's a bunch of them a bunch of very successful businesses of people that never passed the bar. I used to know a guy that had this giant credit card business that he sold to Intuit for, I don't know, $150 million that never passed the bar. They're just so entrepreneurial that it's just not in the cards. And if they do go to work at a law firm, they very rarely stay there very long. This is what an entrepreneur is. It's like putting, imagine putting, I don't know, Bon Jovi, deciding he's going to be a dentist. It's not what he is. Bon Jovi's very smart, by the way, a very smart guy. I don't know if you know about him, but very smart. I'm sure he could do just fine in dental school and probably get in and take all the courses, but that doesn't mean he's going to be a good dentist. Or Chris Rock is going to be a neurosurgeon. He probably could get into. It's just none of this makes sense. So you don't do things that aren't along in your wheelhouse. And again, the attorneys that succeed as entrepreneurs most of the time just do it very early in their careers. They don't spend a lot of time practicing law. So they're just too motivated to do it. It'd be like, again, I hate to keep giving this example, and I'm not trying to upset people by it, but if you're a heterosexual or homosexual, and you have to date the wrong sex all the time, that's not for you. That's crazy. People do it. But why? You need to be the person you are and be proud of it. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, so if I'm practicing law, it's a style of thought and action. It's not compatible with being an entrepreneur. It's risk averse. It's all sorts of things. And again, attorneys that, are often the exact wrong types of people to be in business. It's a risk-averse profession where you're worrying about other people's problems, where you're negative because you have. So I'm going to examine today the reason why attorneys often make bad business people and entrepreneurs. And again, you may see all these things and say, hey, I'm the exact opposite of that, and therefore you should be an entrepreneur. So this could be very useful for you. Or you may see that and say, that's right, I'm in the right profession. Like, I'm doing the exact right thing. And that's very important. And I want to just tell you at this point, the story that I was going to tell you earlier. And this is the story. And it's because people hang on to these ideas. They hang on to these ideas that I'm going to be an entrepreneur, or I'm going to do something, or I'm going to do something different. And they hang on to these ideas, and they're often very bad ideas. And so there's the story that I like, and it's about someone that's swimming with a rock, and they keep dunking them. They keep going underwater, and then when they surface, everyone's screaming, "Drop the rock!" And the person with a rock doesn't hear them, and they just keep trying to swim and falling under, and then the people tell them again, "Drop the rock, drop the rock," and then eventually the person drops the rock, and of course they stop coughing and they cough up all the water, and then they swim to the shore and they live. And so sometimes when you're holding on to these ideas, I must work in a large law firm, or I'm only going to be happy if I do this. That's not good for you if you're entrepreneurial. That's not even good for you if you're not happy in a large law firm. Maybe you want to be like, people hold on to all these ideas, or I need to be in a successful, I need to do this, and I need to do that. I need to be a corporate attorney because of, even though you might be better suited to be you, and something with people that want to be entrepreneurs. If you have an entrepreneurial mindset, you know it, not just if you should be dating men or women or both, who have an entrepreneurial mindset. And if you have that entrepreneurial mindset, that's very good, and you should be doing it. But if you don't, what are you doing spending your time worrying about it? You just need to commit and drop the rock and get rid of this freaking dumb idea and be happy and live your life as an attorney. The next thing I'm going to discuss, and a lot of people do that. And so the next thing I'm going to discuss is how you can understand if you're the sort of attorney that's cut out for business. And again, I tell you that as someone that's an entrepreneur and also an attorney and has been doing this kind of stuff for a long time. And so I hope this content is helpful to you. It's very important to understand this. So why lawyers make bad business people and entrepreneurs, and why they make bad business people and entrepreneurs. And the first thing about being an entrepreneur is you need to be incredibly optimistic. You need to be the sort of person that takes an idea and believes in it and gets 100% behind it and is very excited. When I talk to lawyers about business ideas, it's the most freaking depressing thing imaginable. Like, they find every single thing that could possibly go wrong. And that's their job. That's what a lawyer does. And if you're like that, you're probably not going to be a great entrepreneur. I'm just telling you right now. And you might not be a good lawyer because of that, if you don't think that way. This is what we want in our lawyers. We want our lawyers to find every single possible issue that can go wrong because that's what they're paid for. But entrepreneurs need to be masters in possibility. They need to see a future for a business or an idea, and that is far different from what it is today. They need to believe in something if you start a business. They need to get excited, and then they need to be able to get other people excited about their idea and see where things can go. And this is the job of an entrepreneur. And they need to believe not only will they not fail, but that the business will not fail. It's like the idea of the giraffe I gave you earlier. Entrepreneurs are going to get knocked down. Most businesses, I don't know what it is. It's like some ridiculous number. 92% of businesses go out of business in less than a year. Where I live in Malibu, California, like, there's these malls that are like expensive to put stores in, and the odds of a store staying there for more than a year and defaulting on its lease and going out of business are very slim because they can't afford it. Most of them fail. And even national chains, it's just a competitive market. And an entrepreneur may fail again. And a lot of times they lose multiple fortunes. But despite that, like this giraffe, friend, they keep getting up and keep going. They don't get discouraged. Here's what most attorneys do, by the way, when they go into business. They go into business and they try it once and they do something business-like. They try to start a business or something. The business fails and they go back to practicing law. This is not what an entrepreneur would do. An entrepreneur would keep trying no matter what. And being an entrepreneur is about uncertainty. So every business is uncertain. You don't know if people are going to buy your product. You don't know if you have the right mix. You don't know if you're going to be able to manage the employees and do all these things. And you can buy a franchise. That's a good idea. That's a ready-made business for you. But most businesses that you could possibly start contain a lot of inherent risk. And so you never know what's going to happen to the business. And again, most businesses fail. If you look at all the companies that are on the Fortune 500, when the Fortune 500 started in the 1950s, I don't think there's maybe one or two that are still in business. I mean, this is just what it is. And so an entrepreneur needs to get themselves up and get enthusiastic and continue believing in ideas. And this is just what they do. And they need to come up with ideas, and they need to think about how things could go differently and this is just the way the thought is. and then they need to believe no matter what happens. When I started recruiting, by the way, I gave up the practice of law and walked away from a job that at the point paid probably, what would the equivalent be now? Probably close to 400, maybe more, over $400,000 a year. And and again, it's crazy how much things, and not only that, I had all this stuff. I was freshly married. And when I say freshly married, I'd only been married a month when, to the astonishment of my wife and her family and everyone around me, I walked away from the practice of law to start doing what I'm doing now. I was 4 months in and I hadn't made a single placement. And at this point in time, my wife was going on to the out into the front yard on her cordless phone and talking to her family. Like, this guy's freaking lost his mind. Like, what is he doing? And it was and everyone was very sad. And for me, and thinking there was something wrong. And I was working in my house and I had an office, but I just didn't leave because I was just working all the time. So one day, my wife and some of her family her friends came over, and they walked into to my office area, which was on the back porch eventually a garage, but I was working the back porch, and I started telling them about how excited I was about a candidate and how, again, I no money coming in for 4 months, I'd taken out a home equity loan, and they just stood there looking at me, and then after a few minutes of talking about how I was just very excited about this one candidate I had, they just walked away, and then I saw them talking in another part of the house, because it was like the back room had a way to see through, and one of them was going like this. I was completely crazy, doing this recruiting stuff. Well, and so I didn't care. Did it make me feel badly? No, because I was very enthusiastic about my candidate. I believed in this person. I hadn't made any money. I've been doing it for 4 months. And that was like on a Saturday. And when this happened, because I was working a Saturday night. And then on Monday, I would start my day I was so enthusiastic about what I was doing. I would start my day at 4:35 in the morning. I'd get up. I couldn't get up at 5 in the morning to practice law for anything, but I loved what I was doing, even though I wasn't making any money. And I got up, and the first call I got was at 7 in the morning or 7:30. And it was this woman named Pilar from Latham and Watkins. And she was like, "Is it early enough for you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she hired a candidate of mine that had been a corporate attorney before, but then had gone to UCLA Business School and then wanted to come back to practice law. And that was a big placement for me. And then, to make a long story short, by the end of the week, I had made like 4 or 5 placements, which is very good for 1 week. And by the end of that year, I brought in personally well over $1 million in fees from firms who were doing what I was doing. And I believed in what I was doing. You could have put me out on the frickin' sidewalk and out of my house, and I would have been doing it. It's just, I believed in myself. And so this is not how attorneys think. Attorneys are trained to think in a different way. And they're trained to spot issues and to find things that can go wrong. And once someone starts law school and practicing law, this is what you're taught to do. You're taught to become an expert in finding everything that can go wrong in a situation. And this is the job. This is the job of an entrepreneur. There's a guy named, it's kind of funny, his name's Peter Swire. I think he's a professor now at Georgia Tech or something. And he went to Yale Law School. He clerked on the Supreme Court. I think he clerked on the Court of Appeals. I don't know, but he was teaching at University of Virginia Law School when I was there. And one day I was talking to him in his office, and I'd just written a paper, and he told the class that it was the best. I had the highest grade in his class, and it was the best paper, and it was about this. And he'd said this publicly to the class, and I was like, "Wow, this is great." And then, so anyway, I was in his office later, and about something, and he said to me, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Why are you in law school? You're like nothing like these people." And his office had a window that I don't remember, but it overlooked the law library. And all these people were like sitting all there very, very serious. And I was in his office, and he's like, "You don't belong here." And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm getting the best grade in your class. I'm doing a clerkship. I'm a law review all the time." "No, you don't. You shouldn't be doing this. And you're not like anything like these people." And this is how it is with an entrepreneur a lot of times. You're not going to fit in necessarily with that environment. And I'm not saying, and I thought he was crazy. I was like, this guy's freaking nuts. I'm going to go to I was very offended. I'm like, I should go to the administration and say something about this Peter Swire saying that to me. He's raining on my parade. I can't believe, how could he be freaking rude to say that I shouldn't be an entrepreneur and I'm clerking in a big firm? And no, he was absolutely right. And the other thing I would say about this Peter, anyway, he's a really smart guy, but I didn't take his advice at the time, and he was absolutely right. He was right. You need to do something else, and because entrepreneurs need to be able to find everything go right, and most real attorneys find everything go wrong, and you need to be able to. Attorneys, by the way, when they get into businesses, a lot of times they're freaked out. There's constant change and risk with keeping the business going, and there's no plan. Everything's changing, and so to stay successful, businesses need to make constant changes. Look at Elon Musk and Twitter, like he's charging for special things. He's changing things. He's doing this and that. And businesses just need to be able to come, in order to do this, need to come up with new products, new services, updates, ways of doing business to stay successful. Nothing's stable. No business is stable. If you want to have a stable business, it's almost impossible. Maybe you can open a McDonald's, a franchise, but even a McDonald's needs to change its products and come up with healthy alternatives. And again, I've seen so many attorneys start businesses, more than I can count. I don't even, and most of them fail. Not all of them, of course, and some of them succeed miraculously because they're in the right business, but most of them fail. And often when they fail once, they give up and become defeated. And it's a complete opposite of entrepreneurs. An entrepreneur may start 25 businesses before one succeeds. And this is common. And the 25th may succeed. Slack was a failed software company that developed a way for messaging its people. A lot of these companies, you would be amazed. They're the product of failures. And so businesses that are started a lot of times by attorneys the attorneys are very negative, and they blame all sorts of people for their failures. They'll blame their investors, managers, the markets, customers. This is how an attorney thinks. Like if a business fails, it's not the attorney's fault. It's the fault of their investors. It's the fault of their bad hires. It's the fault of the market changing. It's the fault of the customers not being ready for the idea. This is how attorneys think. And this is not how an entrepreneur thinks, by the way. But an attorney thinks they need to find fault with everybody. And a lot of entrepreneurs, most of them, realize that failure is just part of the mix, and they don't care. They don't take it personally. They just keep going. And so entrepreneur is also about ambiguity and not certainty. You don't know what's going to happen and what's going to go wrong. You have to jump into these ideas and take the plunge without having any idea what's going to happen. They'll come up with outrageous ideas all the time, and they'll never know whether those are going to succeed or not. I've seen some of the craziest ideas that entrepreneurs will come up that they just get incredibly wealthy. I don't understand it, but they're just fine proceeding in the face of ambiguity. And most lawyers want to know how things are going to turn out. It's just a different type of thought process. They want to be able to write things down. They want to know what's going to go wrong, and they want to know if their odds are better. And it's very funny, for example, watching attorneys when entrepreneurs are in pitch meetings. And so pitch is when an entrepreneur like pitches venture capitalists or something on their business idea and to try to get some money. And the lawyer will often look at the entrepreneur like the entrepreneur is insane. And they'll just come up with all these what ifs. What if this happens? What if this happens? And this ambiguity doesn't discourage the entrepreneur, because the entrepreneur knows that the chips are just going to fall and they'll make changes as they move along. But they don't think like the attorney. And again, entrepreneurs just have to deal with like lots and lots of uncertainty, because they may see something that they see an idea and they have a gut and belief in it. You don't know. You don't know how things are going to work when you meet someone for the first time. And you have to have some ambiguity. Lawyers, for example, don't think that way with businesses, and they just think in a different way. And that's part of the problem. This is one that I hate, because a lot of lawyers, especially ones with good credentials, believe that their credentials and their intelligence entitle them to be successful, while entrepreneurs understand the business is about something completely different. I'm just going to say it. A lot of times people that went to great law schools and got great grades think because they're so smart, they're going to, whatever business they go in is going to do just great because they're so smart. The problem with that thought process, again, it's not true, is that just because you're a very good mathematician doesn't mean you're going to be a great novelist. Come on. These are different styles of thought. It's just that it doesn't mean anything. You have to understand that. So lawyers place a lot of importance on their credentials. They believe that having a law degree, having done well academically, and having worked with a prestigious law firm gives them the credentials to be successful in anything that they choose to do. And that's just not the case. I'm sorry, but being an entrepreneur is different. It's a different, again, the possibility thinking, the creative thinking, the willingness to change directions and things. These are things that are about an entrepreneur. And again, I speak to attorneys all the time who think that their credentials will make them successful in the business world. Inside the legal environment, this may be true. Again, if you're an attorney inside of a law firm, like, hell yeah, you should be paid a lot of money. You're paid for specialized knowledge, the ability to find fault in things, the ability to come up with good arguments. If you're a litigator, the ability, this is a skill. It's something that most entrepreneurs can't concentrate on. These are skills. But these abilities are different than what you need in the business world. I talk to people all the time. They're like, I went to Yale Law School. I'm gonna go and show them how to do things over there at this company with $100 million in revenue. No, you're not. You have no idea. You may be able to write a great appellate brief or whatever, or do a transaction, but that's not the same thing. Business people succeed because they see ideas and possibilities. They come up with ideas for products and services. They organize people and they manage them and they inspire them, which is a whole different to carry out the things. And then they promote these products and services to the market. These are different skills. The skill of being an attorney is not coming up with ideas for products and services. The skill of being an attorney is not managing people to promote these products and services. And the skill is not inspiring people. These are just different skills. Like, you don't, just because you're smart doesn't mean you have these skills. I would not probably be a very good lots of things because I don't have the skills. It's just it's the same thing with you. Entrepreneurs are using feedback to constantly change their products and services and marketing. And again, this is a completely different set of skills from what it takes to be effective as an attorney. It's night and day. So I want to make sure that if you think because you're smart, you're going to be a good entrepreneur, no, that's, again, most entrepreneurs could never be an attorney. So it's not, but these are just different personality types. And again, the problem is when you've been practicing law for several years, you've developed a very narrow skill, which is a great skill. It's a huge demand on the market. You can charge hundreds of dollars an hour or more for your services. You have a very special skill. But again, you don't have the skill of being an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are learning this thing from the time they're very young. I'm having a meeting with an entrepreneur that graduated from high school and then went to UCLA, which is a good school, great school, and started a business right after that. Does hundreds of millions of dollars a year. He just understands entrepreneurship actively. But most entrepreneurs, by the way, never went to college or finished high school, and they have the skills. This is their skill. They think this way, and they have the skills needed to succeed in business. And they've often had them since they've been very young. And attorneys who start businesses, they get eaten alive because they've never developed the skills needed to be good at business. I used to have I have sometimes these people that like deans of law schools and things come to, there's a school near where I live, Pepperdine, that has a law school. And they have these meetings for professors from around the country. I don't know whether sometimes they're about arbitration and things. And so I will have professors from different law schools that come to Pepperdine, and sometimes they're professors, sometimes they're the deans of law schools, and I'm not going to name any of them, but it's funny, like they talk about starting their own business. They always come to me and they talk about, I have this business idea for this or this business idea for this, and it's amazing to me. I'm like, wow, because I listen to these ideas and they're really freaking bad. They're like, and they're not. And again, I'm not criticizing these professors or these deans, but they're not business people. They're academics, and they're not even lawyers. They are lawyers, but they don't think like lawyers. They think like academics. Again, so academic is not a lawyer. They make horrible lawyers. The academic is not a entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is not an academic. People need to understand their skills that you develop. And so these professors, by the way, when I listen to these ideas, I'm like, this is just freaking crazy. Just because but they think that because they're smart, because they've went to Stanford or whatever, and then they clerked for the Supreme Court. Now they're a dean of this big law. And again, I'm not giving any examples because that's not anybody that I've talked to qualifications as far as I know. But the point is like this, they're not entrepreneurs. And again, being an entrepreneur is much different. So I had a very funny experience recently. So I'm a member of this group called the Young Presidents Organization. And this is a while ago, and there's no attorneys in this group, by the way, no attorneys working in law firms. And I was like, wow. And there's one, actually, a guy that's got a huge book of business. I don't know what it is, probably at least $50 million. And he's at a big firm, big New York-based firm, or maybe, I don't know which one. And so I was trying to sponsor an attorney that I know, that a very famous, not famous, but well-known kind of national figure. And I went to the board and I was like, you guys, can we let him in? Can we do all this? And I'm president of my chapter that I'm in. And they're like, no way. And I'm like, what do you mean? So he's never had to make payroll. He's never had to struggle for money. He's an employee of a law firm. And this organization is for people that have run their own businesses and started businesses. And you have to have a big business to do it. I don't know what it is, but you have to have, I don't know, 50 plus employees and, I don't know, 12, 15 million in revenue or something. And you have to own the business. I don't know. There's other qualifications. You can work for a business, but you have to be a certain, I don't know, but anyway, I don't even think you can work for a business. But anyway, the point is that they were like, no, they're like, no. And there's one attorney. And I was like, what about this attorney at this other chapter? And they're like, we never would have let him in. That was a mistake. And I was like, wow, like this is how the entrepreneurs look upon attorneys. Like they think that and again, I'm not criticizing the organization. I'm just saying that it's not, people that are entrepreneurs do not consider attorneys entrepreneurs. And most attorneys have never had to struggle for money because they're working for other people. And you need to have this mindset to be successful in entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs and business people, most of them have had very significant struggles with money. So they have to raise money to make the companies go. Sometimes they've had difficulty making payroll. They may not be able to market things. They have to lay people off to keep the business running. They may have failed in different businesses. They may go bankrupt. They may have all sorts of problems. I remember my first business was an asphalt ceiling business in Detroit. And one of my first forays into it, I had a bad day where you would put this asphalt product on a bunch of driveways. And then if it rained, it would all wash away and go in the street and all this stuff. So I had this horrible thing happen where I did it 2 days in a row, and it rained so hard that most of my driveways was like $2,000 or something worth of this asphalt ceiling stuff all washed away. And then I bounced checks and I had to go back and people didn't pay me and I had to redo the work. And I got a migraine headache. It was very difficult and almost gave up. And I would never been so stressed. Sounds appeared louder than they really were because my head was. So this is the kind of struggles that entrepreneurs have to go through. And it breeds hunger and scrappiness, and it makes them unique because it just makes them unique. Elon Musk too. I mean, the way he used to cut corners to save money and things, even when he was successful, is amazing because he figured $1 invested now would be worth 100 later. And I was reading, anyway, but entrepreneurs have to be looking for deals. They're always bargaining everything. They're careful about how they spend money. They're always seeking to do things more cheaply if possible. And they're hungry to grow their business or start new ones because they don't want to fail financially. They've tasted what it is like not to have money, and they don't like it. They don't like it at all. They want to make sure that they succeed. So this failure makes them experience to never experience failure again. So every time they fail, they become more and more scrappy. And it's like the giraffe getting knocked down. They just learn again and again. And that's part of the lesson. When you're an attorney in a law firm, you're just getting a check and when you show up and you do your academic type work and it's stressful, but you get paid. And lawyers have a different background. Most have been in positions where they've been paid to use their minds exclusively since college. And I love the idea of that. That's awesome. If you can do that, wow. And you're paid a lot of money to sit behind a desk and do the sorts of work that lawyers do. It's a freaking awesome job. You're supported by secretaries, paralegals, and others. Many times you're given very comfortable offices. You have health insurance. You can easily qualify for mortgages and live in nice neighborhoods. You can send your kids to good schools in these neighborhoods. But the entrepreneurs are a different animal. Most entrepreneurs do not pay themselves because they need to pay their employees first. So again, like if you're an entrepreneur and you don't pay your people on time in California or something, good luck, man. You're going to get fined and lawsuits. And even if you just miss a day, I had an instance once where I hired a guy and we put him on payroll at a property I own to build a fence because I had some goats. I don't know, it was a long story, but I had some goats and sheep and I needed a fence because these goats I needed a higher fence. And it's just like I was doing some, it's crazy, anyways, farm animals. And anyways, and this guy was paid a day late. And I don't know why it was. I think it was because and anyway, those fines for that were thousands of dollars. And it was just crazy. And so it's just different animals. So, and he was paid a day late because he'd filled out I don't know what happened, but but entrepreneurs need to lay off employees. And then they need to be able to rapidly scale up. Again, when the business gets busy, they need to not worry about what people think about them when they do these things. Look at these companies, how many people they lay off. Well, that's what you need to stomach if you're an entrepreneur. You need to basically be like, I'm going to lay these people off. I'm going to cut corners. I'm going to do whatever you can. And a lot of times entrepreneurs need to live frugally and then they need to be extra motivated because the experience of failing, they don't want to happen again. They need to get up like the giraffe. And again, lawyers often lack the hunger because they've never failed. And so if you come up against someone like the giraffe that's been knocked down 50 times and you're a lawyer and you're negotiating against them or you're in business against them, who do you think's going to win? Just think about it. That's like me and the law professors talking about, or deans talking about their business they want to start. Wow. Like, it's just so, you're going to be much less effective many times if you try to be an entrepreneur as a lawyer. And again, I'm just telling you this to warn you because a lot of people that are watching this are going to do it, I'm sure. And so you need to understand that you need to be as hungry and again, you need to know how to manage things and how to keep costs down and how to be aggressive at marketing. Do you think I send emails? I'm sure people have gotten emails from me and people will respond to those emails. Thank you sometimes, but other times people will respond. I saw a picture of so-and-so online and she looks like say awful things back to me, like just horrible things. And I don't know why people are that way, but that's their prerogative. And so I have to continue going forward and people will get upset with me for different things. But you have to constantly be able to innovate and take getting knocked down and step back up. Again, every time I send an email, I risk people getting mad at me. If a law firm doesn't pay me on time or decides they want to get away and I tell them about it, they attack me. It's just crazy. But you have to be willing to do all that kind of stuff. And so the other thing is lawyers tend to be poor marketers compared to entrepreneurs and business people. It's not true across the board. There's some lawyers that are freaking incredible marketers. Some of the most famous marketers that are not attorneys and maybe just went to law school, but they are attorneys, but they never practiced very long, are actually attorneys that are marketers. So there's a lot of very good attorneys, but most attorneys are poor marketers. Lawyers are so bad at marketing, a lot of them, that it used to be illegal for lawyers to advertise. Now, I'm not talking about the lawyers that are advertising on buses and television and things in consumer-facing practice areas. But most the largest law firms view it as undignified. They think that the quality of their work should engender referrals and they should never have to talk to people about why they should use them and they should never have to market. And I was at a big New York law firm and I was like, I want to go out and pitch this firm and I want to do all this stuff. Do you have any brochures I can bring with me? I'm just fired up about this. I want to get some business because I was bringing in business as everyone should doing. When I was a third year associate, I was bringing in, I don't know, $25,000 a month. And this is the job of an entrepreneur, is bringing business. And this is where I was at. But I said to this firm, I was like, do you have any, I would like brochures and stuff to bring with me. And they said, oh, we never thought about that. No, we don't have anything like that. And then I was like, are you sure? And then a couple of days later, I got this call and it was from the marketing manager. And they said, we've got something for you. I said, what is that? And they printed up these cards that were like this big that said DeweyBallantine.com. That's all it said. Was there, and this is what you were supposed to give people. That's all it said. It was on heavy paper. And you were supposed to give, this is their marketing pitch. It's like, this is a major firm that, back then was doing hundreds and hundreds, maybe $1 billion a year representing all these giant banks. This is that was their marketing collateral. This is how law firms think. And marketing may be considered, is considered undignified in some quarters where attorneys, it's law. It's not necessarily the kind of thinking that's needed to sustain a business and get it off the ground. Look at the frickin' publicity stunts that these major entrepreneurs think. There are tons of them. And to succeed, a business needs to get their name out there and they need to be seen. Do you think that I'm worried about being seen? You have to. I just did these brochures or something, and there were pictures of me, I don't know, driving a Porsche or something, and another one of me. And people are like, how could you possibly show yourself, even though it's not even a car that I currently, but how could you possibly do that? This is what entrepreneurs do. They have to get out there and be seen. And you need to take risks to get the attention of the public. And whether it's in-person meetings or advertising or publicity stunts or other ways, this is what entrepreneurs do. They have to get out there and be seen. You have to stand up, and sometimes they make a fool of themselves. They'll dress up in chicken costumes. Who knows? They'll do whatever they can to be seen. And I've seen entrepreneurs and businesses. I've been at presentations before where entrepreneurs like, it doesn't even matter what you're selling. It's just all about how you promote it. Now, I don't believe that. These are famous marketing people say things like this. Like, they don't even know what they're selling. They know what they're selling, but it's more important to sell it. It's more important to be able to market whatever they're selling than the product is itself. And I believe that a well-branded product sells better than the equivalent. You can go to, I was at the grocery store, CVS the other day, and I saw the funniest thing. There was some brain vitamins that I thought looked fun, but make your brain smarter or something. And so I was looking at these brain vitamins, and CVS, there was a huge thing of these brain vitamins that CVS had manufactured. And then there was another display with some branded product of these brain vitamins. And the branded product was like $69 a jar. And the one for CVS was like $9 or something. And I looked at them, and there was the exact same ingredients. There was no difference. But the ones that were the $69, the expensive ones, were almost sold out. I'm like, what the hell? It's the exact same thing. So branded products, things that have advertisements and lots of colors and things, are always much more popular. And lawyers are often afraid, when they deal with marketing, they're often afraid of looking dumb, making mistakes, or being offensive in the smallest possible way to the marketing audiences. This is what lawyers do. Lawyers get marketing products a lot of times and they make fun of them. And a lot of times they let their egos get involved in marketing, and they believe that if someone is going to view them negatively if their marketing somehow sticks out. And I see this with attorneys all the time. It's crazy. And it's just holds them back. And this is not what you can be if you want to be an entrepreneur. Lawyers want referrals, and they depend on this. But in the real world, the best marketers get the most business. I cannot believe, I'll just say this to you right now, everyone on this call, I cannot believe how much money some of these personal injury attorneys make. Like, it is amazing to me. And these are people, a lot of them that have come from major, like the biggest law firms there are, and gone to the best law schools. And they make this entrepreneurial decision to start a personal injury firm, and they're doing the right thing. And I would suggest to you that personal injury is an entrepreneurial type of practice area, I think, because someone's hurt, and that's all the proof you need. It's not like all these motions. It's just different. It's not like commercial litigation or something, or corporate law. But the marketing these guys do is freaking incredible. And they get a lot of business. And then when I say make a lot of money, tens of millions of dollars, some of them per year. Wow. Like, just wow. And they're like, oh, I'm going to, I only spent $80,000 for my tickets to the Super Bowl, but they were good seats. I mean, this kind of stuff. No, that's not how I think. And I'm not. But this is the kind of thinking that they can do. Whether it's Steve Jobs, Richard Branson with his balloons and all these stunts, or Donald Trump, who's a great marketer. Come on. Wow. You can market your way into the freaking White House. Promotion is what the most successful business people do. This is what Steve Jobs did. This is about marketing. And so you can't care if you're doing this, if you're an attorney. This is your job. Lawyers are also poor customer service compared to entrepreneurs and business people. Now, not all of them are, but a lot of them are. They're paid to give answers, understand legal issues, and take sides for clients in different legal environments. And they're not paid to understand a bunch of points of view for the customers and clients and make sure that every customer is as happy as possible. And again, servicing a client may require customer service related skills, but the business environment is almost always going to go wrong, and making people happy needs to be a priority. And to be good at customer service, a business really needs to like its customers and to understand their points of view and care about them. Meaning, if you're a business and you're running a company, like you need to fall in love with your customers. Do you think I like you? Of course I do. I love attorneys. Like I'm crazy about them. Do you think I like law firms? Yes, I love them. I'm crazy about them. Like I do. I love you so much. I'm doing this webinar. I love everyone I love what I do. I love my audience. And this is what you have to do to be good at it. You have to love your customers. But lawyers are more focused on legal issues. They're focused on the other side and the enemy and the customers, and they don't necessarily fall in love with them. And they're used to being right and discounting the points of views of others that aren't on their side. And that's just what it is. It's just a different point of view. You have to, if you're an entrepreneur, do you think Steve Jobs loved computers and creating interfaces that were easy for people to use? You have to be focused on your customers and loving them to be an entrepreneur. And that's not something that all attorneys do. Lawyers are also poor managers. And again, most attorneys are not good managers. Business schools, when you go to a business school, by the way, it's like, wow, like they're doing like all this collaboration, all these groups, and everyone kind of boosting each other up and all these special terms. And it's all about, this is what business schools teach, that it's all about collaboration. And again, people that go to business school are not always entrepreneurs. So I want to be very clear on that. But law schools do not teach collaboration the same way. And most law firms are led by attorneys who don't have any significant training managing others. It's just what it is. And therefore, most attorneys, associates, and partners tend to have very high levels of dissatisfaction practicing law. There are some law firms that are very well managed that people are very happy at. I could call out a lot of names, but there's a lot of very nice law firms out there that people like and that are well managed, but most law firms aren't. Oric is an example with very happy people for the most part. There's some great law firms out there. Oric is a very nice firm. But there's other firms that, where they're not, and most of them are not happy. When I talk to managers that work for our company, they tell us, oh, every lawyer I speak to is unhappy. And that's just, wow, it's not true, but a lot of them are, because it's not necessarily because practicing law is evil or the law firm's evil. It's because lawyers are not good managers. They grade each other with compensation. People that build the most hours and have the most business make the most money. People that are the biggest and most demanding firms make the most money. That's how you're rewarded with a paycheck, but that's not something that's necessarily good for your spirit. And again, attorneys that manage others inside of law firms are often the ones that aren't the highest paid. They're the people that are the associate development managers or your summer associate attorneys that help. They're the ones that bring in the most money are typically the ones that are given the highest prestige. And lawyers, most of them do not measure themselves based on management surveys and things, or like hours billed, or that's how they manage themselves based on hours billed in books of business. And it's just different than professional managers. And professional managers inside of companies are judged by how happy people are working with them. And law firms believe that they're paying a lot of money to their attorneys, and therefore they can do whatever they want with them for the most part in terms of the work, and they can be mean. And they're not all like that, of course, but lawyers are not taught to manage people. It's just how it is. And therefore, attorneys speak of feeling abused and never knowing their status and that sort of thing, and not feeling valued. And it's the opposite of companies. Companies, not all companies, but run companies try to emphasize these sorts of things more than others. And law firms tend to believe, especially for associates, that they don't involve most of them in the business side of things, where they might be happier if they just believe that they're worker bees. And one of the things that I don't like, and you notice a lot when lawyers get into the business world, is they often will bring this law firm training with them. So what happens is they become secretive about things with their staff. They put people into different piles. This is the enemy. This is the good or bad person. They believe that paying high salaries is the way to get what they want. They often expect people to follow their orders, and they're more focused on than conflict than necessarily reaching agreement. So one of the keys of good leadership, by the way, and I'm just putting this as a side, or people that are happy in this world even, is being able to have people to be someone that walks into a room and you try to find agreement and make everyone happy. This is what the best people in most professions are able to do, by the way. This is what the greatest leaders and things, you walk into some place and everyone is happy. And you, instead of creating conflict and pointing, you make everyone happy. And this is not what lawyers do. They walk into rooms and there's conflict and there's enemies. And this is just how the thought process works. That's why a lot of times they're not good managers, and good managers do the opposite. And then lawyers, again, are never exposed. This is one reason they make the business side of stuff in most law firms. They never know, the lawyers are secretive, so they never learn about things like revenues, expense management, the challenges of hiring, marketing, expansion plans, all these sorts of things. And instead, they tend to be working at their desk, and they get their information a lot of times not through direct reports like you would if you worked on a public company where all this information is public, where you just get it based on rumors and different sort of gossip blogs and things. And so law firms often keep the majority of their staff and even their partners under a cloak of secrecy, where they're giving them very little information. Whereas in a company, most companies, all this information is public, a lot of public companies. And it's funny when I speak to senior associates, a lot of times they'll brag that they've been on some client pitches or things are looking up because they were able to go on some pitches. And this is their exposure to the business side. And in the business world, these sorts of things happen with astonishing regularity. From the time you join a company, you're exposed to this stuff. Law firms just don't teach attorneys very much about businesses. And again, it's just how that works. And I don't know. Let's see here. Yeah. And the other thing too, I just would say that the whole business mindset, work with every year, there's a lot of attorneys that go to very prestigious business schools, whether it's Michigan or UCLA or Chicago, but attorneys will always decide that maybe they don't like practicing law and they want to go to business school. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them do horribly in business school. I don't know why. They just don't pick up the thought processes and they don't have the right mindset. And I don't know what it is, but then when they try to get jobs in on-campus recruiting, even at these really good law business schools, they typically don't do very well. And so then they decide to go back to practicing law. I don't know why that is. I think it's that, again, I don't know. But what I would say is that a lot of businesses pick up on this and maybe they don't have the right type of mindset. Another thing that is important to understand is lawyers are often followers as opposed to leaders. And again, that's not all lawyers, but it's a different type of characteristic. This risk aversion leads them to coming up with new ideas. And a lawyer needs to, entrepreneurs to find something no one else is doing, exploiting this need. A lot of attorneys go to the practice of law and they stay practicing law because it appears to be safe. And an attorney can get a job with hundreds of large law firms. She's gone to a good law school and done well. But and they'll do well in a law firm if they're able to follow the rules. But inside law firms or most legal environments, there's really not a lot of rewards for independent thinking. And most legal environments tend to be pretty conformist, and they attract a certain type of person who tends overall to be quite conservative and unwilling to rock the boat. If you meet the most successful lawyers, and I say this with respect, but the most successful lawyers at the very largest and the most prestigious firms are pretty dry and very dry. They're not, and especially in certain practice areas, that they're not the most exciting, and especially the better the law firm. A great law firm, I don't know, the names, but I talk to partners at Davis Polk and places like that, and I find them. And again, I'm not using Davis Polk as an example. Really good firms like that. And they're very dry. It's rewarded. It's not being excited and stuff is not, this is how excel many times like that. And if you're not like that, you'll be rejected, spit out from a really good legal environment like a virus, and you won't like it. And again, there's a lot of tolerance in law firms for diversity. But diversity is not necessarily about having entrepreneurial tendencies, I guess, is one of the things I would say. Now, does that mean that the law firm would allow someone to be there that doesn't have those? Of course, but the diversity doesn't necessarily mean the type I'm talking about. Lawyers work for clients. They're servants. And again, I'm not criticizing that, but they're servants and they're expected to ask a certain way. And that's what a lawyer does. And the more important the client is, the more of a servant you are. And that's just, you're someone that's working for very successful people. Even the most, I was sued once by Tom Girardi, who is, I don't know if you guys know, but he went to, I fired this accountant that was working for me that was coming into work at 1:30, but and I was like, this is ridiculous. I got to fire this guy. So I fired him. And then he hired Tom Girardi to sue me. And Tom Girardi at that point was the most connected personal injury attorney in the history of Los Angeles, making tens of millions of dollars a year. And this guy sued me on behalf of his friend. And I couldn't believe it. Like, he was showing up at all the hearings. He was reachable. And it was this nuisance lawsuit. But he was just servant and acting like it. He was showing up in court and bowing his head. And I don't know why he was doing this favor for his friend, but it was a stupid case and ended up settling for hardly any money. But the point is that this is how lawyers are. They're servants. And this guy should have been talking down to me and all sorts of things, but that's not how he was. And so I go to conferences all the time. And when I go to conferences, not all the time, but enough. And I'm always talking to people or seeing people that started successful businesses. And in almost all cases, these are people that are seeing something that's not being done in the world and which can be done better. And then their interest is always, they have an overriding interest in changing something so strong that they're literally willing to risk everything to look different, to do that thing. They don't care what other people think about them. And they stick out. They'll stand up in the middle of an auditorium and talk with passion about their idea. They don't care what other people think about them. And they'll risk ridicule, failure, looking different, and upsetting the status quo to get things done. And this is not how attorneys think, by the way. Most attorneys do not think this way. And I'm just are going to be a little bit different than that. So this last portion is about how to know if you should start a business. And I want to be very clear that a lot of what I've said so far is negative, but in my opinion, there's definitely lots of attorneys who definitely should start a business. And just because your law school doesn't train you to start a business or support you necessarily in doing so, this doesn't mean that it's not something you should do. Again, there's a lot of people in the legal profession that really are already entrepreneurs. Even though I've said a lot of things about how being an attorney may not necessarily be entrepreneurial, it actually is. It's one of the coolest businesses there frickin' is for being an entrepreneur. I was reading yesterday that, if you can believe it, doctors aren't allowed to own hospitals. But lawyers, of course, are allowed to own law firms. And being a law firm, being a partner in a law firm, is about the most entrepreneurial of all endeavors possible. The reason is because you have business. And so a law firm, you bring in your own business as a partner, and your job is to basically, it's like a franchise, but you have to go out and get business and bring it in. And then the law firm you're paying to supervise everything and to bring in associates and to provide overhead and things. And then you're basically running a business when you're partnering in a law firm, and you have your own kind of small business, which is, no one ever thinks about it that way. They're like, oh, the hours are horrible. This is but no, you're actually learning a skill to run your own business later. And partners in law firms are expected to bring in business, to maintain their business, to grow their business, to manage their business. It's not the typical entrepreneurial type of job, but it is an entrepreneurial job. So if you are unhappy being an attorney because you have business things, this running your own business is something you can do later in exchange for 50, 80% of the money your clients are paying for your services. The law firm's going to provide an office, brand, support, secretaries, and computers, phones, associates, and all sorts of other things. It's a pretty good deal. You can make a lot of money. And if your skill is practicing law, then that's great. And if you don't like that arrangement, the quality of support the law firm's giving you, and most importantly, you don't like that, and how much you have to pay for the support, meaning if the law firm's taking 80% of your money and you think they should only be taking 70, then you can leave firms. And this is what partners do. You can switch firm, you can take your business elsewhere. And if you don't like it, I want to give you the idea so you can think about it as becoming a partner, why that's like a business. Once you become a partner in a law firm and you have business, essentially the business is this. You have, if you have $1 million a year, or let's say you have 2 million, and the law firm is paying you 1 million, that means that they're taking 50% of the money you bring in. There are law firms that will pay you 1.5 million if you have 2 million, but you're going to get a different level of associates, a different brand and everything. There are law firms that will pay you only 800,000 or 600 if you have 2 million. But this is the arrangement. So as a law firm partner, you're basically trying to maximize your revenue that you're going to realize from your clients and based on the amount of business that you have and that the law firm will help you generate. Again, partners with business often enjoy what they do much more than associates, in-house counsel, and partners without business, because you can control your destiny and you don't need to take abuse from anyone. You can move. It's very easy for partners to move. If you have business as a partner, I've seen partners that have moved firms every 2 years. I don't like to talk about it, but for decades, because they get to one firm anyway. I don't know why they do that, but you can, and it's fine, and you can practice into your 80s as an attorney because you're selling your mind. It's not like and the business is predictable. It's the same business over and over again, and there's a lot of criticisms of the legal profession. I'm one of the first to level them, but again, once you get a decent sized book of business, it's pretty freaking awesome. And I'm just telling you, if you enjoy the work and you don't want to have to come up with ideas and do all those sorts of things, it's pretty great. And you can also start your own firm. This is another business that attorneys do. Again, I've talked to you today and about some of these people that do these things like personal injury law and stuff, and how well they can do financially and how happy they are doing it. And I've been amazed how well you can do. I know attorneys, some of them making millions of dollars a year. You can just do very well. And if you like practicing law and you're comfortable with marketing, getting yourself out there, and you have a thick skin and are not afraid to fail, starting a law firm can be a really very good decision. And you may not share the wealth you may have to share the wealth with new partners that join you. It's still not uncommon for a lot of small law firms to have lots of profits, millions and millions of dollars. So that's a business. That's an entrepreneurial activity, is starting a law firm. And most of these law firms that are started, a lot of times they'll break off of big firms and they'll be like, we do things differently. We're the younger, hipper, or we've got more better diversity or better whatever. They'll have all sorts of pitches that they give, or we don't believe in hierarchies. And it's always been the same stuff, by the way, for the past 50 plus years that new firms say. It's just one, but you can have your own firm, and it's the ideal business. Think about this. All you're selling is your mind. What a freaking awesome business, and your understanding of something you've been doing. You need to do so out of an office, or you can do it remotely. You just need computers. The cost of producing the service is almost zero. You can sit down and charge all this money. I do consulting, but when I do consulting, I have to sit here and talk like I'm doing right now. I mean, like as an attorney, you can just sit down and read something and get paid. It's awesome. Or write something, which is even fun. So it's great. And there's a huge barrier to entry in the legal profession. That's one of the other reasons why it's a great business. You need a license to enter the business. Not everyone can get a license. You have to take a test and you have to go to school to get this license. So this is a good business, guys and girls. It's a great business. You have to get a license. And then you need to get trained by someone. So if you're in a law firm and you're young, you're getting trained in a business. You're getting business training. What the heck? How awesome is that? And then you're getting contacts and learning people and so you have the ability. There's a huge barrier to entry to any practice area. So in the practice area, there's a huge barrier of entry to becoming an attorney. And so my advice to you is, if you're thinking about starting some business, like some ice cream franchise. I saw one guy start a diaper chain in Russia called Yankee Baby, which is very funny, that failed. He was a partner, I think, from before he did that, at Baker McKenzie. And I think I placed him at Preston Gates. It's very rare which is now Kano Gates. But the point is that this is a business, man. That's what, and these are good businesses because the product doesn't cost anything. It's just your mind. It's always there, and you can keep it going in your 80s. And the legal field's huge. And that's why there's so many law firms. There's lawyers crawling out of the street. You can go down any street in America, in any suburb, and there's probably lawyers living out there. I always like to say that litigators are crawling out of the walls. There's so many of them, but it's a business, and they're there, and there's work. If you don't like practicing law, though, which a lot of people don't, and you don't find reading, arguing, or transactions and documents interesting, which you may not. It may make you very unhappy. And if you're really unhappy with the work and not just what it represents, so some people just think, oh, I shouldn't be working for big corporations. This is horrible. That's not saying you don't like the work. That's saying you got other issues. But if you really don't like the work, then you should and maybe be thinking about doing something besides practicing law. And that's what I'm going to talk about right now. Quitting the practice of law could be, if you're not fit for it, and you want to do something else, could be, or you're more entrepreneurial, could be, it's like ending a bad relationship, but it's toxic. If you're with someone, you know you're not going to marry them, you're not excited to see them, and you realize being with them is not right for you, then you should get out. I've had that experience before when I was younger, I guess in my college and things like that, where I was in these relationships and I just was like, I know it's not going to work out. It's literally, I remember with a girl, it's not a personal story, but I remember I was in the airport and saying goodbye to her or something, and I wanted to literally run because I just was like, this is not, so if you feel that way about practicing law, like you want to run, that's not good. It's not good for any relationship. And if you're really unhappy about practicing law, and not just the firm you're at, then you should get out, and you need to. And you need to know, but you have to know it's not going to work for you. You just have to know it instinctively. You have to feel it in your heart. So when I became into this business that I'm doing now, I just knew in my heart I was going to do it. I loved it. I couldn't think of a better way but you have to feel, and practicing law has to make you unhappy. And if you don't like practicing law, by the way, in most instances, not all, the change of venue isn't going to make much of a difference. Maybe becoming an academic will, that's different, but going in-house or changing practice areas or firms, if you really don't like the type of work practicing law, it's not going to make a difference. So when I was practicing law, like even though I was doing it, I would spend large portions of my day thinking about how fun it would be to be doing commercial asphalt work, literally ordering books on Amazon when it was new, talking to, what the heck? It doesn't make any sense, but that's what it's like when you're entrepreneurial. But there has to be something about the work that you detest and that you believe limits you. So if the idea of being a partner in a law firm or having your own law firm doesn't excite you, and this is what you need to think about your own business. And this, by the way, this is a very important part of this webinar, because if I'm talking to you right now and you're thinking this way, then this is very important. These are very big decisions you need to make. But you need to believe that, because you're walking away from something that you can't change this decision. You need to believe that you're never going to like practicing law the same way you might feel about a food you'll never like. And this is really the best way to know if you're never going to practice law. Just like the idea of me running away from a girl I didn't like anymore in an airport. I don't know why I wanted to run, but that's not right. But yeah, this is, by the way, there are so many opportunities in the business world. It's insane. You have so many opportunities if you want to get into business. I could talk about business all day long. I'll tell you one funny story. This is just an aside. This is one of my favorite stories. I had, when I used to do this asphalt work, I would go around in this city called Grosse Pointe in Michigan, and I was at the business doing asphalt work for this asphalt servicing. And one day, one of the biggest houses in Grosse Pointe and nicest houses, like on the lake with a pool and all this stuff. Grosse Pointe used to be one of the richest communities in the world because it was where everyone from the automobile industry and stuff. Let's just think about a very nice house. So I went to this guy, I was like, wow, what did you do? Because I always would talk to these business people, and I was like, and the guy would always be walking around in a bathrobe with his wife and everybody sitting by the pool and smoking cigars. And he told me about his business, and his business essentially was he washed all the windows in this city, Grosse Pointe, and basically would get these people out washing windows and charge back then, I don't know, a couple $200 or $300 a house. And he would send these crews out, and each one of them would bring in a couple $1,000s a day, or $1,000 or whatever in revenue, and he would pay them minimum wage. So he'd have 5 or 6 crews, and they'd go out washing windows all day and making him, I don't know, $10,000 a day. You have to wash windows in the winter, and then you have to wash them in the spring, and then you have to wash them again in the fall. So it was a good business. And the guy had been a banker, like he'd been a banker and gone to business school and everything. And here he was running a window washing company, but living in one little community and living and happy and living in one of the biggest houses in Grosse Pointe, which used to be the richest community in the world. So it means one of the richest. So the idea, you can make money in business doing all sorts of things. It doesn't matter if you have a degree. It doesn't matter what you do. You don't need to even go to college. Again, this is washing windows. I've seen people do really well running restaurants. In LA, there's people that have restaurants that make $1 to $2 million in profit a year. Like, really, that's a hard business, but these are just people that start restaurants that have a skill doing that. They know how to organize. I don't know. They know it. Millions of dollars a year. There's all sorts of businesses you can be successful at if you put your heart and mind into it. And when I was practicing law, I had this funny experience. I was writing a letter or something for this guy, and he was suing someone or wanted to sue someone. And this guy had just gone over to China to some trade show and saw this cute little doll that he liked and said, oh, let's do something with it or something. I don't know, a toy or something, or I don't know what it was, the toy, but it was some sort of toy. Maybe it wasn't a doll. I don't know. I think it was a toy. But anyway, he'd done some things to it and he imported a bunch of them, made over $100 million in 1 year, just importing a toy. Wow. Think about this. Wow. So there's just so many opportunities you can do in the business world that if you take advantage of, the business interests you. And again, the attorneys that do the best, typically when they start businesses, were consumed by business ideas when they were practicing law. They always dreamed about all these different types of businesses. They would talk to people, and obviously, clearly not the sort of people that should be practicing law. They felt naturally drawn to business and dreamed about starting and growing their own businesses. When they spoke about business, they became energized and they would pop up, their eyes would light up, and they would be excited. And then when talking about practicing law, they just got depressed and their head went down. So think about what excites you. That's what you should think about. And if you're more drawn to business and practicing law, then it's probably something you should be doing. Why would you waste your life and time being unhappy doing something that you don't like? And if you see opportunity where others see obstacles and you really believe it, then you should be going into business. And if you're optimistic about all the opportunities out there and see more opportunities and for yourself as an attorney, then you should probably be a business person. Now, I'm going to say something right now that is not very nice, and it's upsetting, and it's probably going to get me in trouble with some people. But I'm going to say it anyway because I think it's important to understand. When you're an attorney, you're selling your mind, and so there are certain practice areas where you're selling different types of skills, and I keep going back to personal injury, but if you're in personal injury, you're not necessarily selling your idea, you're being a great writer and things you are, but you're really selling your ability to people and to be charming and get clients and market yourself and then convince juries and to settle. These are different skills. They don't require a lot of intelligence, and it's a different type of intelligence. There's social intelligence, there's academic intelligence. So and again, some people that are one are not the other. Doesn't do anything. But if you're trying to practice law in a big law firm, and and you're selling your mind, like people are always, I want to work in a big law firm, I want to do this. Fine. And if you want to work in the best, and they want to work in the best law firm, the better. But if you're competing against like certain people can run if you're a runner and you're naturally can run a 4-minute mile, and you're competing to be a good runner, and then you can only run a 5-minute mile, like you only have that much horsepower, like it's probably not a good idea for you to be trying to compete to run a 4-minute mile on a team that does nothing but that, because you're never going to be able to do it as well as them. If I was to go into a firm with a bunch of Supreme Court clerks and try to compete with them, I wouldn't be up to the mark because I'm probably not smart enough in that way. And it's not to say I'm not smart, but I'm just not. I'm not. And so you need to be very careful. If you're selling your mind and you're putting yourself into competition with people, you better be you probably want to be one of the smarter people out there in the room. And if you're not, you can still do it, but it's dangerous. Just think about it. If you're not the fastest runner, you probably don't want to be in a team. So you need to put yourself into competition with people where you can excel. So that means being in the right practice area. It means being in the right practice setting. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with not being the smartest person in the room, but that's dangerous because that's what you're competing against. And you just have to think about this. If you're constantly in litigation, you're constantly losing because other people are coming up with better ideas. Maybe think about this thing. I'm not telling you that there's anything wrong with this, but I'm just telling you that you want to compete with what you're best at, and you want to use your skills in the most effective way, because if you don't, you're going to be unhappy or you're never going to reach your full potential. And I care about you. And that's why I'm telling you that, because I think it's important. And I respect everyone that's listening to this and watching this, because I know how hard it is to be an attorney. But if you're more interested in making things happen, then you should probably be a business person or an entrepreneur as opposed to an attorney. And I'm not bragging here. I'm just saying when I was an asphalt contractor, I used to never leave my house. I think by the time I was 22 years old, or I wouldn't leave my house unless I was going to make over $5,000 a day. That was, I don't know how long ago that was. But again, I was making money and having fun, but there was an academic side of me that told me, oh, I should go to law school. I should do this. And that's a lot of money to be making at that sort of age. That would probably be like 10,000 now. And again, I told the story earlier, but people are like, why would you go to law school when you can just hire attorneys if you need to? And their idea was that, and this is the way people that aren't attorneys think, is that they think that, especially successful ones, they think that attorneys are there for people who are out there doing things. Do you think Peter Thiel's an attorney? He went to Stanford Law School. Do you think that he wants to practice law? No, he has attorneys working for him. So it's just how it works. The idea is that business people think is that lawyers work for business people, and business people do not go to work as attorneys because their time and ideas are more valuable than doing that. And again, I'm not trying to upset anybody, but that's just how it is. And I never understood the distinction. I never understood why people were saying, oh, you're so stupid going to law school. You're dumb. Like, why are you doing this? And again, like when I did that, like, boom, like everything stopped. All these people that were these entrepreneurs and stuff that were my friends, they were like, went away. And then I think they saw me change and become, and then going to law school, of course, is not necessarily the funnest thing. There's a lot of depression in terms of the grades I'm glad I did it. I think it's a great thing, but I'm just telling you how business people think. And lawyers solve the problems of others, and the people who have problems hire attorneys. And this is very important. So this is another point that I just want to bring to your attention about how to know if you should be practicing law or not. Attorneys are energized by helping others solve their legal problems. Energized. So if someone tells you their legal problem, you should be excited. You should want to solve it. You should know a solution. You should feel fired up to come up with a solution. This is how a good attorney thinks. You should be very excited. It should not be about you. It's about being excited about solving someone else's legal problem. So I want to be very clear about this. I want to say it again because I want to make sure you understand. And you should write this down because it's that important. Attorneys are energized by helping others solve their legal problems. So you should be excited about it. This is how attorneys are servants to other people. This is just the job. This is you're helping someone with a problem, and that should be what gets you excited. If you're not excited by that, there's something wrong. Now, you may be in the wrong practice area and want to help business people as opposed and document deals and things if you're a litigator, but you need to be energized by helping other people solve their problems. If you're not, something is very wrong, and you're probably in the wrong profession. So I just want to make sure you understand that, because if you're not energized by helping other people solve their problems, that's a problem. That should get you excited. You should be fired up to give advice, to be sought out for your advice, to help them to come up with elegant solutions. This should be something that motivates you. And if it's not, or if someone's injured, to get behind them and their problems, or to help someone through a divorce, or to help them get their immigration petitions, whatever. And the opposite of that is business people are energized by coming up with new products or services and ways of doing things that help people in different ways. And attorneys, business people create things, and then attorneys help solve the problems basically that the business person creates. So just think about that. The business person creates products and services. Along the way, problems are created, meaning lawsuits and bad products and things that need to be patented and everything. And attorneys are stepping in and being like, I can help, I can fix that, I can do this, I can do that. But the entrepreneur is making all these mistakes and things along the way and creating problems. And this is the fundamental difference. You could argue you could be both. That's fine. But for the most part, you're either one or the other. You're the person that cleans up problems and helps people solve them, which is the entrepreneur, or you're the person that creates new things and creates problems. I'm not the entrepreneur, but the attorney, and then the opposite with the entrepreneur. Before you ever leave the practice of law or stay practicing, if you're unhappy, you better know, you really need to know what side you're on. And that's it. And it's as simple as that. You need to know what side you're on. And I don't know how else to tell you whether you should quit the practice of law and start a business or not. other than to tell you that. So these are the kind of conclusions real quick, and we'll just wrap this up and then I'll have, but despite the fact that attorneys do not make good business people, most attorneys probably could be good business people if they started earlier rather than later. I know lots of attorneys that I think would probably be much better at business people than practicing law, but never will be because they never make the switch. So you should make the switch to becoming a business person or something sooner rather than later. Again, I gave you I want to keep coming back to this example, and I just want to make sure you understand it because this is extremely important. If you're trying to work in a big law firm and you're surrounded by people that are smarter than you, and again, I'm not trying to this is not a eugenics lecture. It's not, but if you're surrounded by people that are smarter than you and figure things out quickly or are better, that's fine. So maybe you need to be in another practice area or something, because there's a place for everyone in the practice of law. That's what's so nice about it. You don't have to be the smartest in every practice area. But if that's the case, let me just be very clear. And if you have an entrepreneurial bent, some of the most successful businesses out there are started by people that never passed the bar, that went to law school, and they're in dumb things. Like this guy knows credit card processing, which is not a dumb thing, but there are so many opportunities. Window washing. I'm not saying that you need to be a window washer, but I'm just telling you that why are you fighting this like upward battle, like with yourself and trying to do something where you're competing against people that are smarter than you or that are harder working and you're getting all this negative feedback? Is that really a good life? I don't know. I'm just telling you. I know one guy that decided during COVID, he was going to start a chain of drive-up COVID centers or something to do these tests and made millions of dollars. Wow. Again, this is a guy that, not smart, just never flunked out of college. You can do all sorts of things. If you're holding on to the practice of law because you think that you need to be someone that you're not, or you care about what other people think of you, or wow. I'm sorry, but you have to realize there's a lot of things you can do and you need to be very careful. And I think one of the biggest curses of the legal profession, and it is a curse, is that a lot of times people will make too much money too early. And you'll come out of law school and you'll make $200,000+ a year very quickly. And I'm sure maybe more. And you, of course, are very attractive as a provider. So you'll quickly get a family, you'll get a house, cars, and you'll start relying on this income. And obviously that's great, but you won't save money, which most attorneys, you may, but you'll start becoming risk averse. And this is what attorneys do. I'm just telling you. But then at some point, when you've done all this, you realize, that even though you got all these things, the car you always wanted, the house, the life, the significant other maybe, or whatever, you may realize you don't like what you're doing, but you can't get out because you just can't do anything else because you have too many people dependent on you. You have to pay a mortgage, or you have to, I don't know, you have your kids to support all of a sudden, and then you're not happy doing the job you're doing. My point to you is that if you are interested in business and you really feel that pull towards it, the time to start is now, not later, now. But knowing that once you do leave, the legal world's probably never going to welcome you back, and you're going to have a very hard time returning if you fail in business. So there's a talk every week. I tell everyone on the webinar to read the book Think and Grow Rich. Do a search for, if you don't have to pay for the book, just do a search for Think and Grow Rich, Harrison Barnes, and you'll see the book will come up because it's out of print, not out of print, but the copyright's expired. So I just put it on my website for free. But there's a story in that book where they say, where people are, where the story of burning the ship. So this, I don't know what it was, but the story is basically someone's going to fight a war or something, and they only have 500 soldiers, and the opponents have 520,000 or 10,000. I don't know what the number is, but it's something like that. And so the general decides when they get to where they're going to fight, they burn all the ships because they know if they don't burn the ships that everyone's going to retreat because they're so outmatched. So they burn the ships, and of course the 500 people beat the 10,000 or whatever the number is. So if you leave the practice of law, just realize you got to burn the ships. You should have no other option than to go back, and you need to be very sure of yourself. And really make sure that's what you want to do. But if you do, it's going to be, and if you are cut out to be an entrepreneur and to do something like that, it's going to be probably the best decision you'll ever make. So, all right, we'll have someone come and put the PowerPoint up, and then not the PowerPoint, a Word document that I use for questions, and then any questions anyone has, I will take them right now. So. All right, so let me go to the questions here. Give me 1 second. So sometimes I like to go a little out of order with the questions just because it's kind of fun. What are avenues available to someone with a law degree who's able to find employment or has no aptitude for entrepreneurship? There's lots of options available. You don't have to, so this is another point I want to make to you and everyone on the call. The first thing is you can find employment. There's always jobs for attorneys. You just are not applying to enough places. And some great jobs, by the way, for attorneys, I think are with the government. It doesn't always have to be practicing law with the government, but you can certainly go far practicing law with the government or doing things with a law degree for the government. I just think that the government, there's all sorts of great positions there. There's a lot of stability. If you were interested in the law, the hours are good. You can make good money. There's good benefits, and working with the government's awesome. And so I would recommend state or federal government as one, but that's just one kind of idea. And you don't have to have an aptitude for the entrepreneurship. You may just want to do a job for someone else, and that's fine. But you need to understand what you like. I would recommend on BCG. I don't know if you need to create an account to do it, but I would take what's called the DISC profile test just to understand where and it's free. There's no cost or anything. Just to understand what you're most suited for. The nice thing about that test on BCG, we're actually changing it. But if there's things about make you not a good attorney who's suited for it, it'll tell you. But if you're unable to find employment, the first thing I would say is people learn at different strength or different. There could be things you're doing wrong in your interviews. There could be just better people out there. But why go into, if you're having all these problems finding employment, why that can be sometimes a sign, but it's also a bad economy. And so you need to keep that in mind. But I think there's all sorts of things you can do. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You might be a good salesperson. You might be good at teaching. You could teach in college or elementary school or high school or community. There's all sorts of things you can do. So in a law degree is a good thing. None of this is negative. Just because you're not fit for a big firm or whatever doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It means that good for you. You went and got a degree. You learned how to be a better thinker. You have these skills, and now go do something else. Who cares? Just because it's great. People get degrees all the time that they don't. Most people that study anthropology and don't become anthropologists, and you can do a lot of good things. So I definitely would not say that there's anything wrong with your career choice at all, with not being able to get a job. And I would just experiment with different things and find what you like. I don't know, my dad used to say, I think he said by the time you're 40, you should know what you're doing. I would say because people live longer now, maybe it's 50, I don't know. But you can experiment with a lot of different professions. And one of the things that my grandma told me when I was going to law school is I stopped by her house and I don't know, she gave me a check for $100 or something. It's funny, congratulating me for using law school. She actually gave me more than that later, but that day she did. And this is when I was driving to law school. And she said, my dad was a lawyer and he became a banker, and his dad was a lawyer and he became, I don't know, something else. And so you don't need to be a lawyer with a law degree necessarily. So what alternative paths can a lawyer do to increase their earning potential and work-life balance? So work-life balance, unfortunately, if you're practicing law, you can certainly get it in different government jobs and different types of places. Different jobs and in-house jobs will give you a work-life balance. You can always increase your earning potential by becoming by going into different practice areas and different settings, or being an entrepreneur. I'm amazed just at how well people can do. You can make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year working in an auto dealership selling cars. You can make a very good living being a real estate agent and one in the right market. And there's all sorts of things you can do, and those can have good life balance. The problem with being an attorney and having a work-life balance is it's like saying I want work-life balance, but I want to be an on-call emergency room physician or something. Clients have problems all the time, and so you have to be able to respond. Now, there's certain practice areas where you can make a lot of money and do well and be successful with having work-life balance. But for the most part, if you're going to be an attorney, you may have to step it up because you're working for others, and that's part of the problem. Okay, let me see. Here's a longer question. Okay, this is fun. I like these partner questions. So give me 1 second here. Uh, Thank you for whoever asked this. This is a good question. Okay, so I'm a partner in a tiny boutique firm that focuses only on real estate. We're doing reasonably well, which is good because now everything's very slow in real estate. I'm in an agent position where I can bring in larger matters in real estate that requires more partner level manpower than my firm can supply, and also bring in big real estate adjacent matters in order to grow. Would you recommend joining a bigger local firm? Yes, I would. I think you can definitely join a larger firm and you can probably get a job there. You can use a recruiter, or you could probably get in there, or you could network your way in. But yes, if that's the situation you're in, that's exactly why people like that move. People like you move is because they want to get more experience. So you actually raise a really good question. And I think what is important for everyone on this call to understand is what this person basically is saying is they're saying they're in a small firm where they became a partner. Okay. Geez, boutique. But the small firm, and they do real estate, which is good. So the first thing about this, I want to make sure everyone understands, is this person does one type of practice area, which is always very good. So that makes them marketable. The firm's doing well, but the person wants to bring in larger matters that requires more partner level manpower, meaning working on different aspects, and then also bring in other types of cases, matters from their clients. So this person wants to move. This person is perfectly set up to move. So I just want to make sure everyone understands it doesn't matter where you start in the legal profession. You can start at a small firm. You don't have to go to work at a big firm. You start at a small firm many times, and you take punches and you get knocked down in there, and then you get into a big firm and you have more confidence. And this person is perfectly positioned. I don't know about moving right now in real estate because it's not a good market, but if it's doing well, that's awesome. So yes, this person could join a larger firm. Absolutely. And that's a great reason to move. So you typically, when you're at a smaller firm, you move when you hit a ceiling because you have all this work that you can do, and you can get more work, and you could bring in bigger matters, but there's not enough partners that can help you with the work, or not enough associates, or the firm doesn't have enough other practice groups. So this person's saying, I'm bringing in real estate. All we do is real estate, but we also could do corporate and litigation and all these other things. And if I had another firm, I'd be able to bring in business to do that. And then I would have more clients. So this person should absolutely move. This is the only, and again, on these calls every week, I talk about why you shouldn't move, but this is a person is perfectly positioned to move. And this is just a great question. And I think it's also inspiring. So if you're a corporate attorney and you come out of law school and you're like, oh, I'm so sad, I'm making half of what I was going to make at a larger firm, or what my classmates are making, because I went to a top 14 law school or whatever, and I don't feel good about myself because my job's not good. Fine. Just do what this person did and just do the best you can. And maybe you don't work in a big firm for 10 years, but then the other 40 years of your career, you do. Whereas most people that join big law firms see what I like about this question. This is actually a really cool question. So most people try to go to the big leagues immediately, big leagues ASAP, and then they stay there 2 to 5 years, maybe 2 to 5 years. And then they're just like done. That's what people want to do. They think that's the best thing. But the smart path a lot of times is start small, get expertise, build clients, get expertise plus confidence, build clients, then move when ready. So if you move at 35, so you have two choices. You can quit when you're 27 to 30, and then go in house or whatever. This is what people do, go in house, etc. Or you can do what this person's doing, and who knows how experienced this person is, say 32, and then go in the big leagues or bigger leagues and just keep moving up. And then guess what? People practice in their 80s now, so they'll probably be practicing to their 90s and stay there 60 years. What do you think smarter? It's funny when what they do with box, what they do. I love these Rocky movies, and Rocky 2, Sylvester Stallone. I don't know. Before fighting or maybe a Rocky 3 or something, after he finally beat Apollo Creed, they had him boxing a long time, and just where he was beating everyone in these fights, and because they were not putting them against the best players. And so this person started a smaller firm, and now this person's going to be able to go into the big leagues. No, maybe not the biggest leagues, but if they do really well where they're at, then they're going to go there eventually. So this was a great question, and I hope everyone can see the benefits of so this is a very good question. So this person, let me just see here, asked a follow-up, and then I was going to profit. The suits I've seen, they seem like they're designed to fund the older person. Fine, that's fine. Then find another firm. You don't have to go to that one. You can also negotiate your salary. So the nice thing about being a partner, it's funny is that you have the ability to negotiate your salary when you're going in. I had a funny thing happen once with it was a big Detroit firm that was trying to hire someone in Los Angeles, and they really wanted this guy, and they offered him their average profits per partner in Detroit were maybe at the time like 800,000 or something, and they offered this guy, I don't know, like 1.4 million or something ridiculous. He's like, how can you possibly do that? What are all the other partners going to think? I know what and the firm responded, we don't care about them. We really need you because of whatever, and when you have to keep it. So the point is that firms will a lot of times do that. Sometimes they may fund the older partner's retirement. What happens when that happens in a law firm is a lot of times the younger partners will get together and leave. I'm not telling you to join a firm where you can leave, or kick the older partners out, which is very common. That's the nice thing about capitalist societies. There's always a way around all this stuff, and that's typically what happens, something like that. If that's your concern, you either join another firm or you join that firm, and at some point that's going to be unsustainable and that won't last. That type of compensation, by the way, is called lockstep. What used to happen in law firms, and it still happens in a lot of them, but especially it was very common, is that the junior partners would always make the lowest salary. And as you got more senior towards the end of your career, your compensation would just keep increasing. It would happen regardless of whether or not you had business. It was called lockstep compensation. And then that would be funding a retirement of partners and things towards the end of their career. Does that happen anymore? Sure, there's certainly some firms that still do it, but it's very difficult to be there. Let me see. Okay, so this question, will the departure of many major law schools, including mine, from the U.S. News and World Report rankings affect the placement and market? No. So most of the rankings of law schools are based on reputation anyway. So that's part of the problem. Is what happens is every year they ask law school deans and judges and things, who do you think the most prestigious 10 law schools are? And they always name the same ones. So that's not going to change very much. From what I'm reading, and most of these law schools that are leaving the rankings are doing so because there's a lot of historic problems with the country and the way, and leftover problems that are affecting things and diversity and things. And so the law schools want to be able to admit much more diverse classes than they're able to under the ranking systems. And so these are all, it's not my role to judge them. From a societal standpoint, this kind of thing has happened in India, and it's trying to address things. And so I don't think that, if that's your question related to that, I don't think that's going to affect anything. But looking to rebound from a layoff in terms of law school rankings, I don't think that's going to affect anything. I think the only way, by the way, if you're laid off, I just want to be very clear with everyone, just so you understand, what do you do if you're laid off? What you do if you're laid off is you work harder than anyone you possibly out there to get a big job. This person before us that asked this question started out at a small firm. They don't care. And now they're ready to move to a big one. You move to a small firm. Who cares? Your job is to get training. You don't care. You're getting paid you don't go to law school and take your first job to get a job. That's a dumb way of thinking about it. And I'm sorry to say that, because I know that's how everyone thinks. I'm not calling you dumb, but I'm telling you, when I say dumb, it's a dumb way to think about your future. The way to think about your future is to think that getting trained is the most valuable thing. Why would you sit around waiting for more money so you can not get trained? And you just want to get a firm that's going to train you right away. So that may mean moving to a smaller market. It may mean all sorts of things. I've told this story before. I'm going to tell it again on this call. I had a woman that was at a big firm in San Francisco, and her husband or boyfriend or something either committed suicide or got sick and died. I don't remember which one it was, and she wanted to, and then she took too much time off, and the firm eventually let her go for whatever reason. She came to me and she said, what can I do? I was like, you're not going to get hired in San Francisco because it doesn't look good, but let's look all over the country. She got 13 or 14 offers but they were in small towns and things like outside of Findlay, Ohio or places like that. Who cares? People are perfectly willing to train her. And the same thing with you. I've had candidates that have been blackballed in Atlanta or in different cities, and who cares? You just pick yourself up and just keep looking. So you need to look at a lot of places. I certainly could do that for you, but I don't need to. I would prefer you do it on your own, but you need to find and again, I'm a recruiter saying, when I say I would prefer you to do it on your own, I'm not saying that I don't want to help you, but I'm just saying that anybody that's laid off from a job, you just need to get yourself out there and work really hard and pound sand to find a job. And that means picking up the phone and calling people and doing whatever you can, because you're a lawyer, you're representing yourself. You can't be a victim. Like, you have a choice of being a victim or an advocate for yourself. Why be a victim? So people like to be victims. That's not productive. What's productive about that? And again, what I don't like about what you're saying here, and again, I'm not trying to be rude, but what I don't like about what you're saying is you're saying your value as an attorney is where you went to law school. That is absolutely false. Your value as an attorney is your ability to advocate for your clients and yourself. That's your value, not where you went to law school. Where you went to law school, it just says, it used to say you did well in the LSAT. Maybe it doesn't say that anymore. Now it says you did well in school, and it says that so that's all it is. So who cares? So there's a secret too. I shouldn't even tell you the story, but I was talking to these people in admissions for top law school, but doesn't matter. But did you know that the way the law schools inflate their grades is some schools, some colleges have a 4.25 grade point average, and others have a 4.0. So what do? I shouldn't even say this because it's the dirtiest secret in the law school admissions thing. They take your odds. They want to take people with these 4.25. So you go to some school and major in fashion and get a 4.25 and get into a top law school. It's very funny. So colleges are either 4.25 or 4.0, and your odds of getting into a better law school, if you get grades in a dumb subject matter, are much better if you go to one of those schools. I shouldn't even say that, but it's true because they're basic. I don't know how it works, but it can help you. And again, don't quote me on that. I'm not an expert on law school admissions, but that's what I was told indirectly in a meeting. But anyway, but you shouldn't be defining yourself based on where you went to law school. Okay. Here's a great question. I love this question. What is the best practice area for an attorney to specialize in looking to start their own solo firm? Great question, by the way. Thank you for whoever asked that, because this is going to help a lot of people. Okay, so you have you have two types of things. You're either a transactional attorney or you're a litigation type attorney. And again, I think it's important to understand the differences and why one person is one and one's the other. So transactional basically means that things like math and science excite you, and that's what you gravitate towards. That's what you do best at. A litigation type attorney is someone that's probably more excited by things like history and English and those sorts of disciplines. And so I can't tell you which one you are, but if you're looking to start your own firm, my advice would be the only way you're going to get clients, you're not going to be able to start your own firm doing commercial litigation and expect to get large companies coming to you for help. That's a dead end, man. That's a dumb thing. So if you're litigation, you do things like family law, you do injury, you do what else? You get the idea. Family law, personal injury, things like that. If you want to do transactional, you can do things like trust and estates. You can do what else? Immigration can be litigation, but it's also transactional in nature because it's just a lot of forms and things. But these family, personal injury, maybe you can do bankruptcy, things like that. Now, what would I do if I was you? I don't know, but I'm a litigator. I can't believe how successful you can be being a family law attorney. Like these family law attorneys bill out just as much money as large law firm attorneys do, many of them. And they do so listening to people complain about their problems. These problems can be as simple as my spouse called me a doo-doo. I don't know, but these are not the most. But there's some bad things that happen in family law, obviously. But criminal's another one. criminal. These are some of the practice areas you can do. And most people, by the way, that go into start their own solo, you could also do tax resolution. There's a bunch of them, which is a mix. But you can go and see all the different criminal. But the ones, it's up to you which one you want to do and how much money you want to make and how confident you feel in it. But I see people doing these all the time as solos. And if you like the practice area and you're enthusiastic about it, you can do very well. So I really do recommend that if you want. And there's other types of litigation too, but those are some kind of examples of that. Let me see here. Okay. Okay, answer. So if I cannot find a job as my own, this is another good question. Thank you. These are great. If I cannot find a job as an attorney, what are the benefits and risks of starting my own law firm? Okay. So I want to be very clear again. Everyone can find a job as an attorney. That is absolutely insane to say you can't find a job as an attorney. The BCG database, which are not every firm in the country, it's only the firms that will pay me to hire you, are some 35,000 law firms, meaning that's how many firms that if you come to BCG that we can market you to. And these are firms that will pay us, meaning not every law firm has money sitting around to pay recruiter fees. So 35,000 law firms. Now, I like to use the number 25,000 because out of those, there's 10,000 that are iffy for, it doesn't matter, but let's choose the number 25,000 just to be safe. So 25,000 law firms. That's an incredible number of law firms. Just in LA, there's 4,000 or 5,000 of these. Like, what the heck? Like, you can't get a job? Like, no, of course you can get a job. There's so many jobs out there and so many places will hire you that you're just not even, no one that's having these problems is thinking straight. So when I was in law school, it was pretty funny. There was this thing called the NALP Guide. And the NALP Guide had, a bunch of firms in each city, but everyone would just apply to those firms. And these were the firms that paid the most and firms that paid themselves a list there. And there were maybe in LA, back then 80 firms, but in LA back then, or maybe 60. And these are the only firms that people would apply to. But instead of those 60 firms, there's really at the time, there was maybe 3,000 firms. So most people that are doing their job searches are only applying to a small section of the firms that they can work at. If you're applying from directories, most firms have to pay to list themselves in directories. So they're not going to be in directories. You can find them by searching Google. And you can find there's towns, there's so many freaking jobs out there. The only thing that's limiting you is your ability to search for them. So I don't like people saying they can't get a job as an attorney because every single attorney out there, it doesn't matter who you are. So I'm in LA, like big market, but what if you want to work in Sacramento or Fresno or Bakersfield? There's so many towns in California, anybody can find a job. So no, you can find a job. Now, what are the benefits and risks of starting your own firm? The risks are that if you don't know how to run a business, that you will fail. So how do you start your own firm? You investigate it. So before any business, most people that start a business, they will go out and study whatever the type of business they're interested in. So when I was thinking about opening my own practice, I bought books. I bought books about tax resolution. I bought books about personal injury. I bought books about trust and estates. I bought books about every single practice area, and I studied every single practice area I could possibly, and I studied it from the perspective of starting your own firm. So there are online companies that will teach you how to be about personal injury law. There are coaching groups for different. You need to go out and you need to study this stuff. You can't just open your own firm and expect people to come to you if you don't know anything. You need to go and learn from other people. Just like you're smart enough to be on this, there's companies that will teach you how to do a different practice areas that you should study. That's what I did. That's what anybody should do. But you need to have something. If you start your own practice too, your own firm, the only other thing I'd recommend is you need to have some sort of focus. So it's either, you don't say I'm a family personal injury criminal attorney. No, you say, I'm a family law attorney, or I'm a personal injury, I'm a criminal attorney, that you say you're one or the other. But that's really the best way of doing it. So that's what I would recommend is you need to make sure that you study the practice area you want to do. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so this person asked a question. Their name showed up, and this is David's question. I'm not going to use your last name. David's comment. Okay, so this was, what job search advice would you offer a corporate transaction attorney with a non-traditional background that includes entrepreneur pursuits in business consulting, I would recommend that you become a venture capitalist or a private equity person, which is a fun thing for attorneys, private equity. Lots of attorneys go into that and become very successful with your type of background. And then that's what I would think about. Something along those lines. I think you'd probably do really very well at that, just because this is the kind of work that you probably just very good at. You have the ability to study companies and do things. And you've also done entrepreneurial business consulting. Private equity and venture capital can be very good pursuits for people with your background. So thank you for that question. Okay, so this particular question is another good one. Thank you for these awesome questions. Everyone who's asking them. Give me 1 second. What are the thoughts about how to balance drive for entrepreneurship and the urge to keep getting a paycheck for practicing law? Yes, but if you're not happy practicing law, and then what's the sense of continuing to do it? What I would recommend is if you really are entrepreneurial, just spend your free time investigating the types of entrepreneurial work you'd rather do. And then and studying that, and at some point the urge is going to hit you to leave and do it. Study it, and the more you study it, you will find a way to leave, or the universe will set something in motion for you. So that's what I would do. It's like being in a bad relationship. Like at some point, it just gets too much, and you end up leaving. And that's the way I would handle that. Okay, let me see. It would have offer. Let me see. Yes, your question, someone just asked that question. Yeah, by the way, somebody said something about an anonymous question. Yeah, every question here is anonymous. I wouldn't use your name if it was an uncommon name. I think it's funny too, by the way, lawyers, it's a strange profession because everyone's like very nervous about their knowing this one. So I never want to use people's names, and it's fine. It's just, you have to keep your problems backed up inside it. It was funny, someone that just asked not to use your name, and I just wanted to give this example real quickly, and I'm actually going to ask another one. Is it okay to tell other attorneys in my firm about my personal problems? Problems could include substance abuse, it could include, getting into a speeding ticket, who knows? But in personal problems, it's okay to tell other attorneys. The idea is, attorneys are very protective of themselves. And the answer to that is many, and I hate to say it, this is the only profession where the answer generally is you have to be very careful. So almost no, it's not okay to tell a lot of attorneys in your office about your personal problems, because if you tell people about your personal problems, anything you tell someone else, they will often use against you. And I hate to say it, because they'll brand you as this, or they'll brand you as that, and you don't want that. And then that can hurt your career prospects. And almost the bigger the firm, the more careful you have to be. Now, is that like that at all firms? No, of course not. Some firms, but it's not okay. So you have to be very careful. And I don't like saying that. So I don't like it. I think that's wrong. That it has to be that way. But that's how the profession is. You have to be very careful about telling other attorneys in the firm about your personal problems, because if you do, no one's going to keep your confidence. You just cannot rely on it. Even if they do keep your confidence, there's ways for them to tell other people. I was at this firm once and friends with partners there, and they would always tell me about other partners, but they would be indirectly about it. They would be like, this one partner was sleeping with another associate, and they'd say, I hope he's closing the door and he's working there after. I mean, they wouldn't say exactly what was going on, but everyone knew. And so you have to be very careful about sharing in your personal issues, because it'll always be used against you, and it shapes your brand and the way people think about you. And it's unfortunate because people want to be human, but you have to be careful. Okay. And again, your personal problems, there's nothing wrong with getting sick. Everyone gets sick. Everyone has deaths in the family and divorces. And so these are things you can talk about, but you have to be very careful about things that could weaken you in the eyes of others. You want to be human, but you have to be very careful. How do you explain why you left your job to get an advanced degree in LLM and went back to school? So there's absolutely nothing wrong with getting an LLM so if you're a health law attorney and you want to get more health law experience, if you want to get more experience in something, or get more training, if you're a tax law attorney, there's nothing wrong with going back to school. Law firms will respect it. I've seen there's some LLMs that for whatever reason again, I shouldn't say for whatever reason, but there's some LLMs that seem to get a lot of respect in the market. Some of them, if you're doing it at the right time. So if you're like an ERISA employee benefits attorney and you want to get an LLM in that's a good one. Tax is a good one. Sometimes things like health law, even education can be really good. There's just a bunch of things where you can get extra education that makes you a better attorney. And there's some that are blow off LLMs. It's just like anything. You have to be careful with an LLM, but I think it's a positive thing. And yeah, this person is just saying I left during COVID to go back to school and took some time off. Yeah, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly okay. I think there's one more question I can answer here. Someone's asking about being a recruiter. Yeah, I mean, you can. I think there's places to apply on our website to be a recruiter. Typically, one of the things I'd recommend too, this is said it earlier, someone's asking about being a recruiter, where would you apply? I think you can apply on our website or just email us and with your resume, we'll just put it in. But the thing about recruiting or entrepreneurship and all these things, someone's asking, how do I tell if I should do it? I would really recommend these personality profile tests. You can take a free one on BCG, but then this DISC profile, but there's other tests that will tell you your aptitude and things. And the way they create these tests is they'll find someone that's just a really great entrepreneur or whatever, a really great attorney, and they'll test them. And then there's just different personality types. So I would recommend really taking one of those tests to make sure to see what your experience is. Okay, so here's another good question. And I think this is probably the last one. I'll check to see if there's any other ones. Can experience gained through traditional law practice provide an advantage in transition? Yes, of course. So it can, being an attorney and traditional law practice is great for entrepreneurship. It's just there's aspects that make a traditional attorney a bad entrepreneur. The thinking process that an attorney gets becoming an attorney is awesome. Like you learn to critique arguments, you learn to separate fact from fiction, you learn to cut through nonsense and get to the heart of a matter, all these sorts of things. You learn to argue, you learn to stick up for yourself, you learn not to be a million different, learn to write, of course, being an attorney is incredible. You learn to document transactions and so you learn a lot of things that are good for entrepreneurship. Of course, these are all great things. It's just what motivates your heart. Like where's your heart at when you're trying to become an attorney? Where are you coming from? And that I think is the most important. Is your heart really in what you're trying to do? Okay, thanks for all the questions. Really did appreciate it. Next week, I think I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about, but there's a couple things I did want to talk about that I do have planned for future webinars. Some are about the benefits of. There's just a lot of things to talk about, but this was something that I think a lot of people wanted to hear, and I appreciate it. And I'm being on this one today, and I think this is a really important thing. And there will certainly be a recording of this to listen to again, but I think this is an important topic. And I hope if this has been helpful for you, you can always refer back to it later in your career if this is something that you're interested in knowing more about. And I feel blessed to have given you this webinar because I think that this is a subject matter that I've lived through. So I've been an entrepreneur. I practiced law, then I became an entrepreneur again, and now I'm talking to attorneys. So I think that the knowledge that I have hopefully is helpful for you. And again, I appreciate you very much being here, and I look forward to seeing everyone next week.